You had a lot of love and support around you today. So let's kind of go back. So we started at the McCullough Homes Projects, which is where you're from. It's where you grew up. A lot of pain, some joy as well. And then Pennsylvania Avenue, a lot of pain there as well, because that's where for 10 years you were there. You were selling drugs and other things. So you had that, but then we come to Annapolis, which is where you live now, which is also where you work. And the great thing about that is we're ending on a positive note, right? Because the last 17 years, what I want people to understand is the last 17 years, you have been clean. And you've been on a straight and narrow, and I can just hear it not only from you, but from talking to your mom, from talking to your family, your friends. They also co-sign that notion. So congratulations to you on that. I'm very proud of you. But let's, for the people at home, let's dig a little bit deeper into some things. So let's start back at when everything all started, right? So when you were growing up, you talked about it earlier. You had a great relationship with your parents. So let's talk about that. Let's go back to the McCullough Homes Projects. You're in your elementary, middle school, high school years, and you have a great relationship with them. Let's talk about that foundation.
So, growing up, I did have a good relationship with them, but I never felt like I was a part of, I never felt like I was part of the family. I never felt like I was a part of the community. I never felt like I was part of, the McCullough Homes, and it all started with me not feeling good enough because of my dark skin complexion.
Okay.
And I was always finding somewhere where I could fit, and I never found that, and that's when I turned to, alcohol and drugs.
And where did that develop? Was that something that developed in school? Was it something? I know you talked about it off the record, where you were saying you were teased in school. Is that where that developed?
Yes, and and then your sisters don't tease you, but I'm getting teased at home. Then I get teased at school. So I just felt like wow, something must be really wrong with me.
We go from that point, and then you end up going to the Air Force. So what led you to go into the Air Force?
Well, I just wanted to do something different. I wanted to escape my father, who was strict. Okay. I want to escape, not feeling like I fit. I told you my entire life I've been searching for somewhere I could fit. So I said, okay, I'm smart. I can pass this test. Let me go into the Air Force. So that's why I went.
And I know you said you were there for about 3.5 years.
Yes.
So talk about your time at the Air Force. What were the ups? What were the downs?
Well, the ups was I loved the Air Force. I was away from home. I could hang out past 6 o'clock.
Had that freedom.
Yeah, I had that freedom. I was able. That's when I first had my taste of alcohol.
Okay, really.
And I was like, wow.
How old were you when you got to the
military? I had just got out of high school, so I was between 18 and 19.
So that was the first time you had a drink. Okay. From that point, how did you end up leaving the Air Force? Like what happened that caused you to come back home to Baltimore?
So when I was in the military, I had got raped. I was dating this guy, and he took me over to his dorm. I was under the influence of alcohol, and I was gang raped in the United States Air Force. From that, not dealing with that trauma, what I did was
did you report that, or did you?
I did report it, because women were back in the days when I was in the military, women wasn't priority, so I felt nobody believed me. So I took all that with me. And so what happened, I got into another relationship with this guy. And because I didn't get the help in the military for that mental health, so what happened, I cut him. And when I cut him, as a direct result of a toxic relationship and me still, dealing with the pain that had happened to me and nobody believed me. So I cut him, and they gave me, it's called a bad chicken discharge, which is a bad conduct discharge.
And you were, in that particular situation, you were defending yourself? Or?
And that, yes, to a certain extent. I was defending the feeling of low self-esteem and not feeling good enough. He said he wanted to break up with me. I wasn't trying to hear that. So when I got to that barracks, I was triggered because I had got raped in the barracks. So when I got there, I'm like, oh my God, he's going to do something to me. So let me get him before he,
So all that trauma from before, contributed to that. And then so let's fast forward, you come back to Baltimore, McCullough Homes Projects. I'm sure that wasn't the plan at that particular time.
Right.
What is life like there? That's when you were first introduced to drugs, right?
Right.
Let's talk about that.
So when I came back, my mother introduced me to this female, and this female was doing cocaine. And so I was at her house, and she said, "You want to try this?" And I was like, okay. And I tried it, and I liked it because it numbed those feelings of shame and guilt. You know, after getting kicked out of the United States Air Force, I had disappointed my family. I felt like I was discussed, and I felt, and when I did that cocaine, it just numbed everything. I didn't have any kind of feelings. I thought I was Holly Berry. It just made me feel better.
Invincible.
Yep, all of it.
And talking to your mother, she was saying that she didn't even know at first. And then, but even it's interesting because even when she did find out, she still saw the good in you. As a daughter, she knew you from birth, obviously, so she saw the good in you. Because she even said she wasn't surprised to see that you are where you are now. So let's get to you're 25 years old, and you're still at this particular time, and you're still at the McCullough Homes Projects, and you have your daughter.
Yes.
Let's talk about that experience.
And, when I had my daughter, like I said, I was just doing it because, I just wanted validation from my father. So when I had my daughter, after she was born, I did not use alcohol or drugs, while I was pregnant because my family would say, if you use drugs, your daughter going to be mental retarded. I'm still looking at what other people think about me. So what I did as soon as I had her, I turned her over to a friend of mine's, and I went off to the races.
So like you said, you didn't use when you were pregnant, but
no.
once you had the baby, you would jump right back into it.
Yes. As soon as she was born and they released me from the hospital, I had a bag of heroin waiting for me, and I went off to the races.
So you get to a particular point where you're still, the mother of your daughter, and we talked about it the first time I met you, and you were telling me your testimony, and you were telling me that at one point your daughter didn't even really want to even embrace you, and she had a problem with showing affection because of the impact of your actions. How did that make you feel? What was that time like?
It was really difficult, but I had to be accountable for the part I played. Like I said, I can remember my daughter got enrolled in college, and she had to do a paper. And she said, "Can you proofread this paper?" And that's when the damage I had done to her, I realized that because she was probably about 18, 19, or 20. And it, after I read that paper, it was like it was written by somebody who was like 4 or 5. But I didn't take her to school. She missed her whole kindergarten year of school where you learn the basics.
Exactly.
So it was really difficult. It's still some difficult times when I look at her, and I, the relationships problems she had because, she took care of me, She distinguished how much people love her by the way that she can take care of them because she was one who took care of me. When I was ill, she would rub my legs, When my back was hurting, she would walk on my back. We would joke like Sanford and like the Jeffersons, and she would walk on my back. So she was my ride or die in active addiction, but I hurt her a whole lot.
Okay, so I want to touch briefly on Pennsylvania Avenue because I know you were introduced to Pennsylvania Avenue and began selling. Instead of selling your body, you decided to sell drugs. And there's a wall there that has some significance. Can you talk about that?
Well, that wall is the wall. I had been up smoking crack cocaine for probably about 3 to 5 days. And I was selling street drugs, and I nodded out, fell asleep, because when you up on cocaine, you just crash. And I was laying on that wall, and that's the first time that I got arrested. I didn't know when you get in a police car that you couldn't get back out. So I got a resisting arrest. I got, charges with, having CDS because nobody told me, because I've never been arrested for that. Once you get in a police car, there is no handles, So that was my first jail arrest up there.
And how many arrests have you had?
I have 58 jail arrests.
And this was obviously prior to the great life you're living now. This was early on.
Yes.
Let's fast forward. How old were you when you were introduced to the Chrysalis house?
53 from 17.
Doing that math in your head, but I mean, you were at this particular point.
I was at 30-some years old, going into treatment, and like I said, the judge sent me there. I was mandated from the judicial system, and they sent me to Carressa's house. And when I walked through that door, I did not want to stay sober. I just want to get out of Women's Detention Center over in Baltimore City just to smoke a Newport. That's the reason why.
That's the reason why you.
That's it.
So you didn't have your daughter with you at first when you went.
No, my sister, who is a really special part of my recovery. What happened while I was in treatment at Chris's house, my daughter tried to commit suicide.
Okay.
And my sister Dee Dee, who is a retired chief in the Navy, she came and took my daughter back home with her and gave her a new way of living, you know. And I am indebted to my sister forever.
Okay. So now, obviously, you came in as a client, like you said, you thought it was going to be temporary there, and you end up becoming, your story is now really like one of the faces of the program, and you're a director there. How did that happen?
Well, how did it happen is that I knew that I wanted to give back to that program because it saved my life. So what happened, I went to school, I got my degree, and, you know, I started at the bottom. When I first came back from Virginia after taking care of my sister's children, I started at the receptionist. From the receptionist, I went to the volunteer coordinator. From the volunteer coordinator, I went to executive support. And then what happened, somebody told me a long time ago I need to dress for the position that I want. I wanted to be that program director. So I went back to school. I'm a certified addiction counselor.
Okay.
I'm in school now, going for my bachelor's in psychology, and I'm also, you know, going to go on with the master's. So it happened because I stayed sober.
And Carressa, what was it because you've been very consistent, and we talked about it before, that's so difficult. 17 straight years. I'm sure there's bumps and bruises along the way, but you stayed on a really more narrow path than going left and right. How have you been able to do that?
Because I look at my grandson. My grandson has never seen me under the influence of alcohol and drugs. Peyton. I love him dearly. I can't fathom, you know, my daughter told me that if I use, I lose. That means I won't ever get to see him again. My mother's 82, you know. I want her to live the rest of her life knowing that I was somebody and I am a living success story. I don't want her to spend her time sitting in that chair when we interview her, worrying about whether or not I'm going to live or am I going to die. So what kept me on that path? And also, I lost my father while I was in active addiction.
Yes.
You know.
You got to talk about that.
Yeah.
That's something.
I lost him during active addiction. I can remember he was on his deathbed, and where we did the filming in the McCullough homes, and I rode past in a paddy wag, and I say, "Wow, how selfish am I? I'm going to jail, and he's dying." So this is my way I make living amends to him. I always look up. His birthday is January the 10th. I look up and I say, Daddy, I finally got it, and thank you. So, you know,
that's coming up.
It's just, you know, the compassion that I have for my family. I didn't understand that back then, you know, but I can't fathom going back and saying I made a conscious decision to go back out and use.
Now, Carressa, you mentioned success, and I want to end on a great note. Streets to executive suites. We have the hoodies on right now. You have the logo. This is what you're dedicating a big chunk of your life to right now. How did that come about? And explain to the people what that is, what your company is.
Yes. Streets to Executive Suites. I have to give a shout out to my sister who came up with that logo. She was like, you know, she came up with the name, my sister Dee Dee. And then I have to give a shout out to Tay, who did the graphics. She came up with the S2ES. And it came about, you know, because my vision is to be a motivational speaker. Okay. You know, and I live the streets, and now I'm up in the executive suites. So my thing is, that's how I came up with that. It describes me as a whole. Exactly. It describes me. And
it's a perfect, to me, it's a perfect representation of when I hear your life story. You know, you start out in the streets, right, in a lot of ways, and now you are in the executive suites. And it's something that I think Shaka said when we had her on camera. She used to be your client, you know, so she's like a mentee to you. And she was saying that she feels, because you started that company, it gives her the feeling that she can, you know, go from streets to executive suites in her life. So how does it feel to be able to impact women, you know, in this world, especially women of color?
And you know what's so funny? You know, I'm glad that you said it, because this documentary wouldn't be any good if I didn't mention two important African American women that laid the path for me. That would be Shirley Baskerville and Lorraine Lake. You know, they were strong women, you know, and just like I'm mentoring them, they mentor me. You know, they gave me the wings to fly. You know, they gave me the confidence. You know, when I walked through the door, both of them told me that they were going to love me until I love myself. And, you know, I know the only way to keep what I have, I'm talking about sobriety, is to give it away. So I do that on a daily basis. I give it away. They taught me to give it away, and I'm doing exactly what they taught me. So part of my success goes to me, but the majority goes to people. those
Absolutely.
people, them strong people who I've been leaning on until I had my own wings to fly. So.
And a lot of those people were here with you today.
Yes.
Just kind of going through this journey
Yes.
with us through journey through your whole life. And one thing that I think is interesting, you are telling the story not just for you, but I think that the story you're telling really represents all the women that you kind of came through the program at the Chrysalis House with, and women that are still friends with you today and close to you today. As we close out, what's your advice to anyone out there? Could be a young woman, could be a young man who is dealing with drug addiction right now. What's your advice to them? And given everything that you've been through and where you are today, what's your advice to those individuals?
My advice is don't give up. There is a way out. My advice too is that you lean on those prayers of your family. My advice too is contact Streets to Executive Suites. I got a lot of contact numbers and that can get you help. I believe I got the help when I was supposed to get the help. I also believe that, we go through a lot in life. I am honored to be an addict and an alcoholic because I believe if the things that I went through, I was supposed to go through to become the person I'm today. So if I was to say to somebody who's struggling with the disease of addiction, as long as you got breath, there's a chance.
Absolutely.
So, I just need them to make contact. That's the purpose of my program. My company is to let people know that I can help you find a way out.
Carressa, thank you so much for this. This has been a learning experience for me, and the fact that you embrace your story, and you're not afraid to talk about the things you've been through, and it sounds really it's really impactful because of where you are now too. My mother always kind of tells me, or my grandfather also tells me this too. People don't really care about the pain, until they see the everything after the pain. The comeback and the breakthroughs, and you had those. So thank you for sharing your story with myself, with whoever's going to see this, and I'm Karl Nelson with the Intern Media. Thank you for once again tuning into the Intern Media interview series. Until next time, that is a wrap. That was good.